into the classics. And she is a prolific writer. If you go on to some of those websites where you can look for books, like Amazon comes to mind, she's just a prolific writer, constantly sharing her knowledge. And I just wanted to read a little paragraph that I have from her that's really important. And then we'll do our disclaimer and hand it off to Elisabeth. Elisabeth Rochat de Vallée believes that the real knowledge of the Chinese vision of life is useful not only to understand Chinese medicine from a scholarly point of view, but also to deepen one's practical approach and clinical skill. This is the reason why she always reads, translates, and explains texts which present a precise pathology and its diagnostic treatment or reflection on the nature and meaning of human life or anything in the between. This is why this is why you have a translation of text. That's the handouts. The only handouts we've given you is translation of the text. This is her style. This is how she likes to teach. Team, can you please bring up the disclaimer slide? And then we're going to pass it on to Elisabeth. Just to remind you, this is for educational purposes. This is not intended to be medical advice. This should not be interpreted as medical advice. If you have a health condition, please seek out a healthcare provider. Again, this is for educational purposes only. Thank you, guys. All right, without further ado, I give you Elisabeth. Please say hi in the chat room for those that are here for the live webinar. Please post your questions as they come to you. Sandra and Lorianne will be moderating those, and during the Q&A period that we'll have throughout today's live webinar, they will bring those to Elisabeth to answer. Elisabeth, please take it away.
Thank you, Lon, and thank you for inviting me for this webinar. So as you know, and you can now hear, English is not my native language. So if you have any problem with my Franglish or my pronunciation, you may ask in the chat, and Lon or Sandro will immediately ask me to repeat or to write. So, and don't worry, I know that I mispronounce sometimes a word, and I don't mind. So, and of course, all other questions also are welcome. So I don't apologize not to have pictures or PowerPoints and this kind of stuff. As Lord said, it's not my style. And what I do with the Chinese classical text is not very adaptable for this kind of presentation. So, but I still think that when we go in early text of Chinese medicine, we can learn something very useful for our life, our own life, and also for our own practice of Chinese medicine. So, and of course, first of all, the Chinese classical medicine is a preventive medicine, so which means a lot of things. But during the pregnancy or for the pregnancy, so it is a lot better to avoid problems than to have to solve them. So pregnancy as well as aging are not pathology. They are not considered as pathology. So, and so they may go very smoothly. So, but in both cases, pregnancy or aging, the person is more fragile, more vulnerable, and also because in both cases, there is a kind of a diminishing of the kidneys, for instance, in aging, or a hard demand on the kidneys. So, and we, of course, the first thing to do will be to check the kidneys to be sure that the balance of the kidneys is always maintained. And when we speak of preventive attitude, preventive medicine, sure, it starts as early as possible. It may start, and we will see that during this afternoon or whatever it is for time or morning for you. So it may start even during the pregnancy for the embryo, for the fetus, not the embryo, for the fetus. So, sure, of course, when we are already a little bit old or when we are already pregnant, we may look for a nice pregnancy and taking care of oneself and preventing problem. Sure, and it's very good to do that. But in fact, the prevention starts as early as possible. I said, for instance, if I have if through my behavior, through the conduct of my life, I have damaged my kidneys or created some imbalance in my kidneys or other things, so it will be more difficult for me to have a good, healthy pregnancy. So it's absolutely obvious. There is nothing new, but uh, just the prevention is always from the beginning of life something which is acting and not out of fear, because its preventive attitude is also the best way to enjoy the most of life, to have the most and the best of the vital forces, of the vital potency. So it is, we say, a win-win deal. So it's it's not a kind of restraint. So because by having an attitude which is called preventive, trying to keep the best possible balance based on my kidneys, then implemented in each of my organs and in all of my channels. So that is also the way to educate myself to be at the closest of the pattern of life in me, of the natural laws, the natural movement of life, as it is everywhere in nature, everywhere in any beings and things, and in me. And that is, of course, the best way also to develop my mind, to develop a balanced emotions, to develop my sensitivity in a good way, or to develop what we may call also spiritual life. So, and so all of that being totally linked. So, of course, when we are in medical text, they will focus rather on all kind of things as that um, diet, good movement of the body, activities, and a lot of other things to avoid dryness, deafness. Sure, but behind all of that, we also have the mind, the heart, the spirit of the person who is more or less totally adhering to this kind of attitude. And if someone is doing prevention, having preventive attitude with diet and so on, emotion, but forcing oneself to do that, not having the test to do, so there is already something which is weakening our vital forces. I am in a little bit of a contradiction with myself. So the best in the prevention is also to adhere more and more to the pattern of life, to the movement of life that this prevention offers to follow. So, and for instance, speaking of kinase, sure, it is the first thing. If I want to have a good pregnancy, I need to have kidneys in a good condition, in a good balance. So, and for instance, in the second part of the handout that I sent, you have a passage from the Sowen chapter 1, which is the cycle of the fertility in the woman. And you can see that everything is based on the good functioning of the kidneys, which allows also, I remind you, the good functioning of all the other organs. And now, but there is also another important thing that we can keep the balance in ourselves, the balance in the kidneys and in all the other organs and circulation, uh, only if we are attuned also with the moment of time, with all cycles inside of me, and also all cycles eventually outside of me. So, and in this text on the pregnancy, we will see that the way the human is behaving, so to have the best possible pregnancy, is changing according to the moment of time, according to the condition, which are mainly the evolving of the development of the embryo and the fetus. The first month is not the same thing as the third month, and it is not the same situation that in the fifth, and she doesn't have to do or to avoid the same thing, to eat or to avoid to eat the same kind of food or flavors. So it will evolve along the time with the unfolding of a kind of cycle in herself as a pregnant woman. And in the same time, she is playing as a kind of role as a surrounding for the development of the embryo and the fetus. So, so the embryo and the fetus is entirely inside the womb and inside what is said by the mother or through the mother. All what is reaching the embryo, the fetus, is coming from the mother and create its surrounding in the same time that it's deep nourishment. So, and we'll come back on that, of course. And sure, so we will see in the text that I have chosen, so the evolving of the mother, month after month, there is another quality of chi which will prevail in our life and which will prevail in all what is sent in the uterus and all what is doing the surrounding of the blood of the uterus, of the embryos and the fetus. So, and so, for instance, we will see in a while, during the beginning of the pregnancy, the first month of pregnancy, the liver and the liver channel will prevail because it's about keeping the blood, guarding the blood, treasuring the blood inside, and not letting it flowing out of the uterus. So, but as we will see, while in the mother we will have a succession of channel month after month, and as the unfolding of a little sprout in the spring, for instance, starting with the liver and the liver channel, so it starts as in the spring, and then there will be the Shaoyang of the gallbladder. So it is a wood element, it is a spring season, it is this quality of qi, and then we will continue with channel and organ of the fire and the summer. So then of the earth and the intermediary season, then of the metal and the autumn. But here and then we will arrive at the achievement of the cycle. So, but we will see that in the same time, inside the fetus, not the embryo, but the fetus, once the fetus is constituted, there will be also a kind of natural cycle developing by itself in order to build the new life of the child. And it will be an alternation of the 5 elements or phases or agents, whatever you want. So according to the curse cycle and starting or control cycle and starting with the water element. So, and we will have two cycles, one in the mother informing the fetus, and another one in the fetus already having a kind of life which developed by itself. Not totally, because before the birth, all what the child or what the fetus receives is coming from the mother, as I said, coming from the blood and chi, the sweet chi of the mother. And uh, so we have to remember that what is called the qi, the blood and qi, in the Chinese civilization and culture, as well as in Chinese medicine, implies a lot more than just a physical yin-yang balance in the body or with substance and qi working on this substance to transform and move them. So because blood is more than simply a liquid. It's never part, for instance, of the body fluids. It's always a part of a category of itself, because in the blood we do not have only the yin of the body, the liquids, the quality of the liquids, but we have also all what is in my mind, all what is in my heart, which is present everywhere in myself, my body, through the blood, which implies that, for instance, of course, any perception, ability to know, any emotion, or and so on, is also in the blood, carrying in the blood, and affecting the quality of the blood. So, and that is important for this this perspective, the Chinese perspective, because the blood and chi of the mother, which will pass through the fetus, embryo and fetus, mainly fetus to nourish it, will not only build the physical nourishment, but also the mental one, the disposition of the mind, of the emotion, and so on. So all what is in the mother life is passing through her blood and chi to build the child life. But of course, with several other things, so the mother is not alone, because as I tell you, there is also a kind of cycle of life taking place in the fetus by itself. So, and also, if we look at the beginning of life, the very beginning of the pregnancy, the very, very subtle and imperceptible starting of an embryo, so we will have the mother and the father joining their essential fluids, so their liquids full of the potentiality of life, the sperm for the father and the blood of the uterus for the mother, and that they present a kind of earthly water, if you like, to be fecundated, to be put in move and in alive by what is coming from heaven, what is coming from above. So in this text on the pregnancy, they don't speak of that because it is not the place to do it, but we have always to remain in this perspective that the embryo and the fetus and the child who develops in the womb of the mother is, of course, very linked for all what is formed in oneself, in themselves, to the mother, but that there is also the essence of the sperm coming from the father, this which makes the basic substance of the embryo, and that there is also a life which is coming from above, which is coming from behind the genitors of the father and the mother. Yeah, sure. Making each child not only the child of their parents, but the child of the cosmos. And that is a perspective which is a great one, and which is always in a kind of that back, yeah, in the back, yeah, and of all what is said. So now, um, I will share my screen mostly with you and with the same text that I send you, and perhaps if you have time, some others. So, and I will just follow month by month, trying to explain what it means. Another very